It was a quiet morning at Arlington National Cemetery. The sky was overcast, and the breeze carried with it the scent of pine and fallen leaves. American flags lined the walkways, gently fluttering in the wind. Most of the people visiting that morning came in small groups, family members, fellow veterans, tour buses full of students. Some carried photos. Others brought silence. But one woman walked alone. Her name was Emily Lawson. She was in her early 30s, dressed in a simple navy blue coat, her hair pulled back in a loose knot. In her hands, she held a carefully wrapped bouquet of white chrysanthemums. She moved slowly, respectfully, scanning the rows of names etched into pale stone. When she reached grave 54C, she paused. Her eyes fell on the inscription. First Lieutenant Nathaniel C. Ward, Kia, Helmand Province, 2008. She didn't kneel. She didn't pray. She just stood there for a long moment, breathing in the silence. Then, with both hands, she placed the flowers at the base of the headstone. A nearby groundskeeper watched her from a distance. He didn't recognize her, but he noticed something unusual. She didn't wear a military family pin, no cemetery badge, no ribbon of association. Still, her posture was reverent, almost too personal for someone outside the family. A few visitors in the background looked her way. One whispered to another, "Do you think she knew him?" Emily didn't answer anyone. She simply brushed a speck of dust from the name engraved in stone, then stood back, her expression unreadable, somewhere between grief and gratitude. She hadn't come for a ceremony. She didn't carry a camera or phone. She didn't cry. She just stood there, completely still, like someone visiting a promise. And then, just as quietly as she had arrived, she turned and started walking away. That's when the whispers began. Who was she? Is she his daughter? I thought the family moved out of state years ago. But no one had the answer. To most people, she was just a stranger placing flowers on a soldier's grave. But for Emily, this moment had been 20 years in the making, ever since the day she learned that the man buried beneath that stone had saved her father's life. And although no one around her understood, someone was watching, and that someone was about to step forward. As Emily Lawson turned to leave, she could feel it. The stares. The quiet questions. The doubt. She hadn't come to make a scene, but sometimes, grief in silence draws more attention than the loudest tears. Two older women sitting on a nearby bench whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "That's not his daughter, is it?" "No, I don't think so. I used to know the Wards. They had no children." Emily kept walking. She didn't flinch. Near the far end of the section, a cemetery staff member in a windbreaker approached with a clipboard. He was polite, but his voice held the kind of tone reserved for people who didn't quite belong. "Excuse me, ma'am. Just checking, are you family of Lieutenant Ward?" Emily paused. She glanced back at the grave, then met the man's eyes. "No, not family," she said softly. "But he saved my father's life." The man raised his eyebrows, surprised, unsure how to respond. He nodded slowly and stepped back, but Emily could tell he was writing something down. A group of ROTC students passed nearby, taking notes on headstones for a school project. One of them nudged another and pointed toward the flowers now resting at Nathaniel Ward's grave. "Someone left those just now. But I thought this section was reserved," he muttered. Another replied, probably someone trying to look patriotic. The words stung more than Emily expected. She had grown up in a military household. Her father, a former combat medic, rarely spoke of the war. But there was one name he mentioned every year on the same day, Nathaniel Ward. She still remembered the first time she heard it. "I lived because he didn't," her father had said quietly, one evening when she was 13. "Remember that name. One day, you'll understand why." She hadn't understood then, but she did now. And yet here she was, standing on sacred ground, surrounded by doubt, people assuming she didn't belong, didn't have the right. A child ran past, nearly stepping on the grave. His father grabbed his arm, scolded him lightly, then glanced at Emily. "Sorry, we didn't know someone was visiting." Emily nodded, offering a brief smile. But the ache in her chest only deepened. For a moment, she wondered if she should have come at all. She looked back one last time at the bouquet of chrysanthemums resting quietly on the marble. The wind had begun to pick up, and one flower petal drifted across the inscription, half covering the date of death. She started to walk away. But behind her, someone else had been watching. Not a stranger. Not a skeptic. A man who knew exactly who Nathaniel Ward was. And why Emily's presence at that grave was more meaningful than anyone else there could possibly understand. Emily had taken no more than 10 steps when she heard the voice. It wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of authority, memory, and something deeper, recognition. "You're Dean Lawson's daughter, aren't you?" She turned sharply. Her breath caught as she saw the man standing near the edge of the gravel path. He was older, well into his 70s, but his posture remained unmistakably military. Silver hair cropped close, a chest full of ribbons beneath a dark wool coat, and the quiet intensity of someone used to commanding attention even in silence. People around her began to whisper, "Is that?" "No way, that's General Claiborne." Retired four-star General Malcolm Claiborne, decorated, respected, and rarely seen in public without invitation. He walked with quiet precision toward her, his polished shoes barely making a sound. Emily's voice was barely audible. "Yes. I'm Emily Lawson." The general nodded slowly. His gaze shifted past her, to the grave she had just visited. "I haven't heard that name, Dean Lawson, in years," he said. "I was there that day. Helmand Province. 2008. Delta Company. Fire Team Bravo." Emily blinked, stunned. Claiborne stepped closer to the gravestone. His voice turned reverent. "Lieutenant Ward wasn't supposed to be on that patrol. Dean volunteered for it. But Ward insisted, said it was his turn to cover the ridge. That's where the IED hit." There was a pause, one that seemed to draw the oxygen from the air. "3 men died that day," Claiborne continued. "But one survived. And he never forgot who made that possible." He looked at Emily again. "Your father wrote me a letter. Every year. Same day. For 12 years. She swallowed hard. "He never told me that." Claiborne smiled faintly. "Of course he didn't. Some debts are too sacred for conversation. But he wanted me to know, wanted someone to know, that his life was borrowed. Because of Nathaniel Ward." Emily stepped closer to the grave. Her voice cracked. "He told me. Remember that name. One day, you'll understand why." Claiborne's eyes softened. "Now you do." A respectful hush fell over the nearby crowd. Even those who had judged her minutes earlier stood in stillness. The ROTC students lowered their clipboards. The cemetery staff member removed his cap. The general, slow and deliberate, stepped beside the headstone. And then he saluted. A crisp, solemn salute. Not out of protocol. Out of brotherhood. Emily stood motionless, the wind gently tousling her coat. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. After a long silence, the general lowered his hand, stepped back, and looked at her once more. "Your father lived a full life because of him. And now, you've given this man something his own family never did. Someone who remembers." A single click of a camera shutter broke the silence. A visitor, standing respectfully at a distance, had captured the moment. No one moved to stop them. Because it wasn't just a photo. It was history. Alive. Right there, between a stranger with flowers and a retired general who never forgot. As General Claiborne stepped back from the grave, silence lingered like a sacred veil over the cemetery. The whispering had stopped. The judgment had vanished. In its place, awe, respect, and something else, shame. A quiet reckoning among those who had questioned Emily's presence just moments before. A father nearby leaned down and whispered to his son. "That's what it means to honor the fallen. You don't need to be family, just grateful." The boy nodded, clutching the small flag in his hands a little tighter. From across the walkway, the cemetery staff member approached again, but this time, not with a clipboard. He removed his cap, held it to his chest, and said softly, "I'm sorry for earlier. I didn't know." Emily gave him a small, forgiving smile. "It's okay. Most people don't." Behind her, the ROTC students had gathered in a small cluster. One of them, a tall girl with short dark hair, broke from the group and walked over. "I think I owe you an apology too," she said. "I didn't understand, but now I do. I hope one day, if I'm ever remembered like that, someone will come, even if they're a stranger." Emily nodded, emotion swelling behind her eyes. No one who sacrifices everything should be forgotten. General Claiborne turned to the small crowd that had gathered. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't give a speech. He simply said, "You don't have to share blood to honor a brother. Sometimes, memory passes not through family, but through those who survive because someone else didn't." A quiet murmur of agreement passed through the group. One by one, people began to step forward. A young Marine in dress uniform placed a coin on the headstone. An elderly woman kneeled beside the flowers and added a single rose. A child handed Emily a drawing of an American flag and asked, "Can you leave this for the soldier?" She knelt beside him, tears in her voice. "Yes, sweetie. I think he'd love that." Even a local journalist who had arrived late put down her camera. She didn't take notes. She didn't ask questions. She simply stood, silently, hand over heart. For the first time in years, the grave of Lieutenant Nathaniel Ward was surrounded, not by silence or weeds or time, but by people who cared. Emily looked to the sky, lips parting as if to speak a prayer, but instead, she just whispered, "Dad." I kept the promise. She reached into her coat pocket and took out a small laminated photo, one of her father and Lieutenant Ward, side by side, in dusty fatigues, smiling like brothers. She tucked it carefully into the bouquet. General Claiborne, watching, nodded. That's the kind of tribute medals can't match. And then, something almost imperceptible changed in the air. It wasn't the wind. It was legacy. It had shifted from war to remembrance, from one family to many. The crowd slowly dispersed, but no one walked away quite the same. What began as a quiet act by a stranger had become something more, a reminder that memory doesn't need permission to matter, and gratitude has no bloodline. Emily stood for a while longer beside the grave, her father's photograph nestled into the bouquet, now joined by coins, notes, and tiny symbols of respect left by others. General Claiborne remained nearby, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't speak much after that. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. It said what words couldn't. Before he turned to leave, he looked at Emily one last time and said, "You brought him company today. And you brought this place, meaning again." She smiled gently. "I just did what my dad would have done if he could have made the trip." The general nodded. "And now, someone will remember this moment, because you came." Emily watched as he walked away slowly, his step steady, but not hurried. A man who had likely given hundreds of speeches in his life now left in silence, because some stories, like this one, speak louder that way. She took a final breath of the crisp morning air, looked once more at the inscription, and whispered softly, "You saved him, so I could be born. Thank you." Then she turned and walked away, not alone, but with the kind of peace that only comes when a promise has been kept. As she exited the cemetery, a visitor passing by glanced at her and said quietly to their companion, "Was she family?" The companion shrugged. "Does it matter?" Later that day, the photo taken earlier, General Claiborne saluting beside a young woman standing at a grave, was shared online. It went viral within hours. The caption read, "She had no blood ties. Just a father who lived because of the man buried here. Honor doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes, it just brings flowers."